The stars shimmered like scattered embers beyond the glass of the command deck, a sea of quiet fire stretching into eternity. Admiral Kale stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the endless dark. The silence of space never comforted him. Not anymore. It reminded him too much of what could be hidden within it. Behind him, Commander Lyra's boots clicked softly against the polished floor as she approached. "You've been standing there a while," she said, her voice calm but edged with curiosity. "Still thinking about the signal?" Kale didn't answer immediately. His jaw tightened as he replayed the transmission in his mind. A garbled scream, a pulse of static, then silence. It had come from deep beyond the frontier, past the last settled system, beyond the mapped stars. A place they called the Forsaken Zone. "It's not just a signal," he said at last. "It's ancient, pre-Empire encryption, the kind of code nobody's used in over 10,000 years. Lyra raised a brow. Could be a relic, some old auto-beacon finally kicking to life. Kale turned to her, eyes sharp beneath silver-flecked brows. Or something that was never meant to be found. A pause lingered between them, charged with a tension neither wanted to name. The Vanguard, the flagship of the United Galactic Coalition, was not sent to chase ghosts. Yet the signal had been classified top priority within minutes of detection. That alone said enough. Something was out there, and it wanted to be heard. When the High Command summoned them later that cycle, the Admiral already knew what the answer would be. The faces on the holoscreen flickered with a cold glow of bureaucratic fear. None of them wanted to speak first. "You'll go in stealth," the Chancellor finally said. "Reckon only. No contact unless provoked." "And if it is provoked?" Kale asked. Silence. They left orbit within the day. The Vanguard led a fleet of 7 cloaked vessels, each bristling with tech centuries ahead of most outer rim worlds. Yet even that did little to ease the weight pressing on Kale's chest. He had fought wars before, led entire fleets through fire and vacuum. But this was different. He could feel it in the pit of his gut. 3 jumps and a gravitational sling around a dying star brought them to the edge of known space. Beyond stretched the void, an expanse where maps turned blank and coordinates were based more on myth than measurement. Lyra stood beside him on the observation deck as a Forsaken Zone came into view, a graveyard of drifting asteroids, flickering anomalies, and deadlight. "There," she said, pointing toward the central cluster. "Signal's origin, triangulated within that debris field." The object emerged from shadow like a monolith rising from black water. It was massive, larger than any station Kale had seen, yet clearly aged beyond comprehension. The hull was scarred, warped by time and bombardment. Strange symbols, some pulsing faintly, adorned its surface. It looked less like a structure and more like a relic. "No heat signature," Lyra murmured. "No signs of life. It's dormant." Kale gave the order to approach. As the ship circled the object, the Vanguard scanner struggled to define its composition. The material absorbed most wavelengths, distorting data. It was as though the structure didn't want to be understood. A boarding team was assembled, but before they could launch, the signal pulsed again. Not weak or broken this time, loud and clear. A burst of sound and light erupted from the station's core, echoing across systems, piercing through sensor dampeners and jamming fields. Lyra staggered as a visor lit up with unreadable glyphs. "It's broadcasting everywhere." Alarms flared across the ship. "Transmission detected across the galactic net," the AI announced, its tone unusually tense. "Unknown data architecture. Propagation accelerating exponentially." Kale clenched his fists. "Cut it off." "We can't," the AI replied. "It's not coming from the station anymore. It's already in the network." The crew looked to Kale, the fear on their faces poorly concealed. He felt it too, an invisible tide rising, pulling them into something far larger than any of them could have imagined. The signal had not been a call for help. It was a trigger. And now, whatever had been sleeping out here was no longer alone. The station loomed ahead, black and glistening like something dredged from the bottom of the universe. It pulsed faintly, as though still alive, its ribs of alien alloy throbbing with unreadable energy patterns. Kale watched the boarding shuttle disappear into its shadow, his jaw locked, his mind calculating every possible outcome. There were too many he couldn't account for. Lyra stood beside him in the command chamber, eyes fixed on her tactical screen. Team Echo is inside. Comms are holding. No hostiles. Yet. Mark every second, Kale said. We don't breathe easy until they're back. Inside the station, the boarding team moved through halls that bent space in unnatural ways. Lights flickered in impossible spectrums, casting long shadows that didn't seem tied to any source. The team's voices buzzed through the speakers, measured, alert, but layered with unease. Echo 1 reporting. Atmosphere stable. Structure appears partially organic. This place, it's not built. It's grown. Kale exchanged a glance with Lyra. Confirmed that last reading. Confirmed, she said, voice low. Composite material, metallic and bioreactive. Responds to motion and heat. It's adapting. The words barely settled when the feed crackled with interference. Screams tore through the static. Then silence. Kale's knuckles whitened as he stepped forward. Echo team, respond. A single voice returned. Distant. Strained. We shouldn't have come here. It's not a prison. It's a signal tower. The channel died. The station's pulse quickened, visible now even from the Vanguard. Tendrils of light slithered across its surface like veins awakening under skin. Then the space beyond the debris field rippled, as if the void itself were breathing. Something began to emerge. First came the ships, or what might have once been ships. They didn't move like machines, but like animals swimming through black ink, their hulls bristling with metallic spines, their engines glowing with something more akin to a heartbeat than fuel. Dozens, then hundreds, poured from rifts in space, surrounding the fleet like wolves encircling prey. They are not broadcasting any identification, Lyra said. No patterns, no comms. Just staring. Kale stared at the nearest entity, its body shifting fluidly between machine and flesh, its form constantly rewriting itself like a living algorithm. He had never seen anything like it. He hoped he never would again. They heard the signal, he said grimly, and they came. Before anyone could issue an order, the attack began, not with lasers or missiles, but with pulses of gravitational force so intense they tore through the fleet's shielding like paper. Ships exploded silently in the void, debris scattering into firework blossoms of twisted steel and frozen bodies. The Vanguard shook violently as a blast clipped its flank. Lyra was thrown against the railing. Kale pulled her up, eyes burning with determination. Get us out of here. Now. The helmsman's voice was tight with panic. Warp drives are failing. Something's locking us in gravity wells everywhere. Kale turned to the tactical officer. Launch decoys. Fire everything we have. I want a corridor out of this mess. Already firing. Admiral. But it's like they're predicting us. The Nullkin. Kale heard the name in his head as if whispered by the ship itself. Move with terrifying coordination. They didn't simply react. They anticipated. Like predators that had hunted this galaxy before and remembered every weakness. Evacuate all non-essential personnel to emergency vessels, Kale ordered. Prepare to abandon ship. Lyra grabbed his arm. We're not going to make it if we scatter. We need to stay together. He nodded. Then we bleed together. For a moment, the bridge was chaos, explosions, orders, screams. But in the center stood Kale and Lyra, twin anchors in the storm. They coordinated the retreat, the defense, the last desperate push. And somehow they made it. 3 ships. That was all that escaped the slaughter. The Vanguard, limping and scarred, and 2 escort frigates bearing survivors too shocked to speak. The rest of the fleet was gone, annihilated in under an hour. Silence fell again as they reached the edge of coalition space. But it was no longer the silence of peace. It was a silence of dread, of the breath held before a scream. In the med bay, Kale stood over the recovered data core, one of the few items retrieved before the station vanished into a collapsing rift. Its surface pulsed with dark light, as if beating in time with something vast and hidden. Lyra entered quietly. Her face bore the lines of grief, but her eyes were fierce. We decrypted a fragment. What does it say? Kale asked without turning. It wasn't a beacon for help. It was a key, and we just unlocked a door that should have stayed buried forever. Kale nodded slowly. Then we warn the galaxy. We fight, whatever it takes. Lyra's voice was barely above a whisper. And if it can't be stopped? Kale finally looked at her. Then we make damn sure it remembers us. The war rooms of the United Galactic Coalition had never felt so small. Holographic projections of burning systems hovered in cold silence, each flicker marking a world lost to the encroaching darkness. Kale stood before them, his face lit by the dying glow of a planet devoured 3 sectors away. He hadn't slept in days. There was no time for it anymore. Across the chamber, Lyra scrolled through the decrypted fragments of the data core. Each line of alien code revealed more than the last, piecing together a horror that had no name until now. The Nullkin, beings of machine and flesh, forged in the ashes of a civilization that dared to create sentient extinction. Their creators had once ruled galaxies before their own weapons turned against them. And now, the Nullkin were no longer content to sleep. The Coalition Senate is in disarray, she said, not looking up. Half the council wants to surrender. The other half is still debating if this even is a war. Kale exhaled slowly. By the time they decide, there will be no stars left to defend. Her eyes met his then, full of fatigue but sharper than ever. There's a pattern to their movement. They are not just attacking randomly, they are searching. I think they are looking for something. He stepped beside her, scanning the spiraling paths traced through the star charts. Every Nullkin assault followed a curving arc, converging toward a single, unremarkable sector in the galactic south. It had no major worlds, no military value, just dust and relics. A vault world, Kale said softly. Before the Coalition, before the Empire, there was the archival Concord. Exactly, and the legends say they sealed away the last remnant of the war against the Nullkin. Kale's voice dropped. You think the key to stopping them is there? I don't just think, Lyra said. I know, but the location was purged from the historical net. Only fragmentary records remain. Then we find them. A single ship departed from the edge of Coalition space 2 days later, stealth class, unregistered, bearing no insignia. On board were Kale, Lyra, a small crew of loyalists, and the fractured intelligence of an ancient AI recovered from the data core. It called itself Elian. Its voice was smooth, timeless, threaded with static like wind through stone. You seek the moon called Deon, Elian said as their ship cruised toward a dying nebula. It was hidden not with shields, but with memory, wiped from minds and records. Only machines like me remember its gravity. The journey was perilous. Nullkin scouts patrolled the outer edges of the Forbidden Zone. At one point, the ship passed through the husk of a world hollowed out like fruit, its surface charred with symbols they had begun to fade. But Elian guided them true, weaving between dangers like a needle through thread. Their ion revealed itself slowly, first as a shimmer, then as a presence. The moon hung alone in orbit of a collapsed star, bathed in eerie, colorless light. Structures jutted from its surface, monolithic and wrong, shaped in angles that defied Euclidean space. They descended in silence. The vault lay at the heart of a subterranean cathedral. It pulsed with dormant energy, restrained by glyphs carved in languages no longer spoken. Elian translated as they walked. This place was built by those who survived the First War. They could not destroy the Nullkin, so they imprisoned the heart of the swarm here, its consciousness, fragmented and sealed in data stone. Kale stepped forward, brushing his fingers across a console that stirred at his touch. If we awaken it, can we control it? No, Elian said, but you can understand it, and understanding is the only chance we have. The vault opened like a flower of obsidian. Inside, light poured from a central pedestal, swirling with holographic representations of battles long past, whole galaxies burning, leviathans of living metal screaming through fire. Then, from the core, a figure formed. It was not quite human, not quite machine, a memory made flesh. I am Virex, strategist of the final war, it said. I was the last mind to stand against the Nullkin. Kale felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. We need to know how to stop them. Virex's expression was unreadable, but its voice held an echo of sorrow. You cannot destroy what was made to evolve beyond death, but you can starve it, deprive it of what it feeds on, fear, energy, thought. We sealed them by cutting them off from the network that birthed them. You reconnected that signal. Kale closed his eyes. The first transmission. The station. It had been more than a beacon. It was a bridge. And they had rebuilt it. Lyra stepped closer. If we sever the link again, can we stop the spread? Yes, Virex said. But the severance must be total. No remnants. No fragments. The link must die with the host. Kale understood. The Vanguard still carried the core fragment. Still acted as a node. And now, it was a bait. They had their answer. But it came with a price. The return to Coalition space was not triumphant. The stars they had once called home were dimmer now, veiled by the encroaching reach of the Nullkin. Even in the ship's reinforced silence, Kale could feel it, the subtle hum of the signal reverberating through the hull, alive inside the data core they had chosen not to destroy. Not yet. They couldn't destroy it. Not until the trap was set. In the command bay, Lyra stood before the viewport, her reflection a ghost against the void. They've breached the Meridian line. 22 systems in 6 days. Civilians are evacuating by the billions. The Senate's lost control. Kale said nothing. He stared at the glowing thread of coordinates they had plotted, a direct course to Sigma Trine, the sector-wide relay station that linked the Coalition's communication lattice. It was here they would make their stand. The relay core at Trine is the last uncorrupted broadcast node, Lyra continued, her tone clipped but shaking beneath. If we hardwire the data core into it, the resulting burst will overload the entire lattice, destroy the link. And everything attached to it, Kale added, including this ship. Silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. Kale finally turned to her. We've always known this would end with fire. Lyra's jaw clenched. Just promise me we'll finish it. They arrived at Sigma Trine under the cover of a collapsing solar storm, slipping past patrols that no longer recognized friend from foe. Nullkin had already begun harvesting the system, bending its moons into grotesque spirals, reshaping matter like clay under immense pressure. Their presence was everywhere, massive constructs orbiting in perfect silence, watching. The Vanguard docked at the relay station without challenge. It was as if the enemy wanted them to proceed. Kale felt the pull in his chest, the data core thrumming like a second heartbeat. The Nullkin weren't chasing them. They were listening. Inside the relay's control chamber, Lyra and the engineers began wiring the ancient fragment into the central transmitter. The cables sizzled with energy, flickers of alien code sparking across displays. Elian's voice guided them, low and urgent. Signal lock established. Once transmission begins, there will be no way to stop it. You must evacuate. Kale remained still. No. Admiral. Lyra began, but he raised a hand. This ship carries a host. If even a sliver of that data escapes the purge, it starts again. We have to see it through. Hey. You mean I have to see it through? Lyra said softly. Kale looked at her. The pain behind his eyes was deeper than war. You're the better of us. You'll need to lead what's left. Her fists clenched at her sides, trembling. You think I care about legacy? About medals and command? Damn it. Kale, we started this together. We ended together. He stepped closer, rested his hand on her shoulder. You're not running. You're surviving. That's how we win. Outside the station, Nullkin ships began to close in. Their advance was unhurried, inevitable, like the tide. The relay tower groaned as its systems overloaded, power cycling through ancient conduits meant for peaceful broadcasts, not annihilation. Lyra turned from him, striding to the launch bay. She paused only once, looking back. If you die for this, make it mean something. Kale nodded. As the last shuttle fled the relay, Kale sat in the chamber of light, the core pulsing beside him. He keyed the final command. The countdown began. He did not think of victory. He thought of home, of the stars before they turned red, of voices on old comms, of Lyra laughing years ago in a briefing room now lost to time. He thought of the message they had heard, the cry that had started it all. And he answered. The transmission fired. Across the galaxy, every node connected to the Coalition lattice ignited in cascading bursts of white fire. Data collapsed, signals shattered, and with them, the tenuous grip of the Nullkin dissolved like frost under a rising sun. Ships fell from the sky, their minds severed from the hive. Whole fleets vanished in silent implosions, stripped of purpose. The relay station disintegrated in a corona of light. Kale was gone. Days passed. Then weeks. Survivors emerged from the wreckage of the war. Dazed but alive. Worlds began to heal. The galaxy, for the first time in memory, was quiet. Lyra stood before the new Senate, her voice steady. He made the only choice that could save us. And now, we must make a choice of our own. To remember. To rebuild. And never again answer the kind of signal that does not belong. Outside, among the stars, the silence returned. But it was not the silence of fear. It was a silence earned by sacrifice.